Hello, SharpyAl here. Today I'm going to show you what the feather pack contains, and just to make a quick recap, if you want to choose the entire tiger owl bundle, you will be given an owl tiger model, and the feather pack will be included in this Blender file. But if you want to take the feather pack separately, you can do so, and this is what I'm going to cover in this video. So basically there are two ways you can use this feather pack asset. The first method is to use this Blender file, and you can use the procedural version of it, meaning, let me show you. So you can open it in Blender. I use Blender 3.4, and you can open this, let's see, method 1. This Blender file, and you will see these are the procedural feathers, meaning that you can do a lot of stuff with it. You can, for example, let's take this feather. You can go into particle edit. You can take this feather and you go into the particle edit, and you can cut the feathers. You can make it grow, and you can also groom it to your liking, and then you can save it. So for example, if you want this feather to be really messy for some reason, or you want to grow it in one side more, you can save it like that. Yeah, so the elegance of this method is that all the feathers are created procedurally, and you can modify them and then save them as you want. So they're not a simple image file that you can just import. This you can make changes to it, and then you can save them. Here you can go into properties output. I could recommend PNG or OpenEXR file, which is lossless, so it's a very good quality format. And of course you can go compression 0 and color depth 16. So you can see these procedural feathers are not colored, but you can of course color them. For example, if you go into shading, for that, to see the color, you need to go into cycle renders, and you can see these are, for example, red. Each feather has a principal BSDF shader, and you can see you can control the melanin content, which is how dark you want the feather to be, how red, for example, if you want to do ginger, weird turkey, chicken colors. You can also change the color of the feather. For example, you can make it green, you can make it purple, red, yeah, whatever you want. And you can change the melanin, the amount of darkness that it has, and the roughness, and so forth. After you're done with that, of course, you can save it in that color. Here you can't see it because you need to go to render settings to see it. So to save it, you need to apply the camera to every feather, and also potentially put a light here, which is what you get. So this is the feather pack, and the camera, and the light. So you can do this for every feather, which is kind of tedious work. That's why for the second method I did it for you. So I saved all these EXR files, and I also I can show you for the second method, you have basically you will get a zip file, 2 zip files, and if you unzip them, you'll get these 2 folders. And for example, this is the Blender EXR, which I saved, and the normal maps. So the normal maps look like this. You can save them in PNG, I recommend. You can apply the normal map, and I will show you in just a second how we can do that. The second method is used in combination with Photoshop, because as you can see here, these feathers are mostly colored or simply colored. You can potentially color these feathers. You can add dots procedurally and stuff like that, but for me, I just wanted to have a specific pattern for my owl tiger project, and so what I did, I saved this in the EXR format. I imported them in Photoshop because Photoshop is capable of reading an EXR file and working with EXR file. And then I added the colors in layers there, and then Photoshop can also save in EXR files. So I saved them back in EXR file, which are colored, and this is what you get here. Just to show you quickly how you can open this in Photoshop. So for example, let's take the first one. Okay, so this is basically the EXR file open in Photoshop, and what you can see are a few layer masks that can tweak specific areas of the feathers. For example, here you have a color map. I can show you, for example, what the feather looks like without colors. It's like this. So the basic EXR file from the procedural Blender file, and then you can just color it. You can raise the exposure, use saturation filter, and then you have a layer on top, another layer to add some gradient and color saturation, then to add these spots, stripy things, and then to add another stripe, and then to add some grayness to the base, and then finally another black spot to the base. So if you really like to tweak all these small details, if you have a specific feather in mind, then I think this approach allows you to fine-tune these details more accurately than with coloring the feathers directly in Blender procedurally, even though that is also a good idea. But for me, this method worked, and I decided to share these files with you. Maybe you will also find it helpful. And then once you've done coloring your feather, you can save as, and of course these are the Photoshop files that I shared, but if you go, you can save as OpenEXR. This is already colored, the one I colored already for you, and you can save, you can make an adjustment to the file, maybe make a blue feather, and you can save the EXR file, which then you can open directly with Blender. So that's cool. I'm not going to save right now. What I wanted to show you is that all these filters, they apply to the feather, no matter what feather it is. So if you really want, you can, for example, so let's say you can open a non-colored EXR file from Blender. Let's save a completely different one, like for example F-head, because we used it in previous details. We say yes. Okay, so what you can do to transfer this is to select it, Control-C to copy it, and Control-P to paste it in this document. And then what you can do, for example, you can, because you don't want it as a mask, you can release clipping mask and it will go crazy, no worries, you can hide this. And then you can select all these layers and then set create clipping mask. So it will, this you will hide of course, it will create a clipping mask to the feather that you just plugged in. And then if you want, you can select all these layers, and then with the move button you can place this pattern as much as you want. You can do it like this, and you already have the pattern in place for the new feather. You don't need to draw it all over again. Of course you can even scale it and so forth, so you can play around with this pattern. You can change different elements of the pattern. You can make I don't know, you can make yellow stripes if you want. Yeah, whatever you want. So after I worked with them in Photoshop, I saved them again as EXR files, but these are colored. That's why they are found in the Photoshop EXR colored. And I also shared the Photoshop file for each feather. So if you want to change any coloration for any of the feathers I displayed here, or the pattern in Photoshop, I already gave you the Photoshop with the color layer, so you can just tweak that. And I will actually show you for the second method. Let me just open. Don't save. So I also shared for the second method, I shared the Blender file with the collection already put in place, with all the normal maps put in place for the specific color palette that I use for the SharpyAl project. But if you want to bring your own feathers, create them, color them in Photoshop, and then bring them into Blender, then I will show you how to do that, and it's quite simple. So this is what you get. This is the feathers that I have. This is the collection. So it has the normal map. You can see this bumpy map. I will show you immediately how to do that. So let's, for example, say that you want to import your own feather from Photoshop. How do you do that? Let's hide this for the moment. This is the background with the camera, the plane, and some spotlight. So this is not important right now. But say you want to import your own feather. How do you do that? You go to File, Import, and you go Image as Planes. If you don't have these options, you can go to Preference, Add-ons, and you can enable a free Blender add-on which exists, and I don't know why it's not enabled, but it's called Import, Export, Import Images as Plane. You just enable this and you do Save Preferences, and then you should be able to see this option here, Import Images as Plane. You go here and let's say you colored your feathers and you want to import them. So for example, this F-head EXR. I take the EXR file and I import it, and it's right here. I'm going to try to bring it bring it closer. Okay, so this is your feather. As you can see, it's imported as an image plane. And what you can do, you can go into edit mode and press Ctrl R, and you go towards one of the edges of this plane. And you see you can divide it using the scroll button. You can divide it in as many pieces as you want, and then you do Ctrl R again, and you go to the other side and you divide it again. And these will be your vertices. Now you can shape the plane because you don't want this, all this extra space around. So what you can do, you take each vertex and you press GG twice, and then you move to one direction. So you just try to shape. You can use GG. You see you can't go any further here, but you can just shape this as you want. So you can make a contour around the feather with GG. You can just press GG twice, and you try to shape the feather. It's important to use GG twice because otherwise, I can show you, if you press GG once, you see it distorts the texture, which is not something you want. If you press GG twice, it won't. Yeah, let's say this is good for practical reasons. Okay, once you have your feather shaped, you can select everything you do not need. Okay, like all these vertices you don't need. Say this you don't need this, and then you click on delete on the keyboard and delete vertices, and now you have your feather is not so great. You can delete again. Yeah, and this is what you get. So now if you want to look, if you want to make it more curved, you see it's a flat feather. What you can do, you can enable proportional editing, and in edit mode you select one vertex, usually one that is more in the middle. So you move it while keep pressing the movement button. Then you can scroll to lower the influence or raise the influence of this action, right? And you see proportional editing is enabled. So for example, if you want, you can make it curve like this. See, now it's a more natural curve. Another thing you can do, you can take, and this is something I should have mentioned in the beginning, you want one of these edges to go directly to the bar because then you can give a more natural look to your feather. So for example, I can do a Ctrl Alt right now and I can add this here. And so with this selected, you can, without proportional editing, so you turn off proportional editing, you can just move it like a little bit below. You see, and you have this a bit curved edge of the feather. What you can do now, you go back. Of course, you can tamper with it as much as you want to make it look more feather-like. Then you can do right-click, shade smooth, and now it's more shaded. If you still see this these edges here, these sharp edges, what you can do to fix it, you can go to Modifier Properties and add a Subdivision Surface Modifier, and you can already see it helps a lot. And you can raise this to, let's say, 3. And you can see the edge completely disappears there, and you put that also to render mode. So now you have your feather very nicely made. One thing you can do, you can see this this feather here is very shiny. Feathers are not so shiny. If you look at the at our collection, if you look at the collection, you can see that our feathers have this this bump to it, right? That's the action of the normal map, and we can do that to our feather. How do we do that? If we disable this, we can select the feather and go to shading. And once we are here, you can't see it because you need to turn. Yeah, this is an HDR. Doesn't matter if you have it or not. You can just go into cycle renders. You can see it better. Okay, and this is what you get. This is a shader. Basically, you get the image the EXR image that you imported as a plane. You modify the plane to give it a shape. You gave it a shape in edit mode, and now you have this. You can add a normal map very easily by just adding another image, texture, and you can add a normal map. So a normal map here. You can connect the color to the color and the normal to the normal. Now you don't see anything because it doesn't have an image. Now we can open this, and you go into Blender and normal maps a folder that you get from the package, and you see what is this. This is object F head. Feather head, you go and you find the feather head here, and you pick this image because it's n from normal. So this is the XR that you save from Photoshop, and this is the normal. The PNG is the normal map. So you can take this, and you can immediately see this change in reflectiveness. So it's more bumpy. It's not so you know, but it still doesn't look good. Why? Because you need to change here the color space because it's a normal map. It's non-color. So you need to change the non-color, and then you can actually see this reflectance similar to the feather. So you can almost see each feather having this hair-like property. It's pretty cool. So yeah, now you have your feather. You can do that. You can create an entire collection, a new collection, and you can just can drag it here. Don't forget to rename your feather. Let's say my feather amazing. One last important thing that you should do is to set the origin of the feather to the base of the barb. And how you do that, you select the cursor and you put it at the base, and then with the object selected you set right click and set origin to 3D cursor, and this will set automatically the origin here. And then if you rotate this, you can see you rotate it from this specific point, which is much more natural, and it will help you position your feathers better. Now, one last thing that I would recommend you to do before you finish completely with this with the arrangement of this feather is to select the feather and then Control A and apply rotation and scale. This will help to set the rotation and scale to 0. So I wouldn't recommend apply transform all, because then you will ruin this origin, which will shift away probably to the world origin or something like that. So you can only just Control A and rotation and scale. That should be enough. Now you have your first feather, and you can create your entire collection and use it for future projects. So yeah, I can't wait to see what amazing stuff you can build with this, and yeah, have fun.